Hi, Stephen here from Sound of a Nation Wave, and this is day 4 of the July daily draws. So as we close out the week and approach the weekend, let's see what message we get. And I'll be taking the first card from the Unfolding Path Tarot, followed by an Oracle card from the Enchanted Map Oracle. So let's choose our first card and get the reading underway. And also, happy 4th of July or Independence Day to my American friends. Okay, here we go. We have Justice. I think this card, when taking in this setting of a daily draw, it can mean justice. It can relate to legal issues. It can relate to all kinds of things, particularly when reading it with other cards around it. But as in a single card draw, and when I do these draws, if the justice card comes out, I tend to see this as the objectivity card, the fairness and objectivity, the two words that I really do associate with this justice card, fairness and objectivity. So the first thing that this card may be saying to us is that we need to be more objective, perhaps, than we have been. Maybe we've been getting too close to an issue or too heavily involved emotionally, and I'm not saying that in fair and objective decisions there's no emotion at all, but it shouldn't be. It's the sort of like the personal feelings or any personal biases that we all have, whether we like it or not, because that's how humans are. But we need to stand back and perhaps look at it more removed from the situation, as someone looking from outside, looking into the situation, rather than being in the situation, looking around at it. We're too close. Our perspective is too close. We need to move back and look at it through eyes of objectivity, trying to be as fair as possible. It doesn't mean we deny any personal leanings or tendencies on our part. We don't deny them, because if we try and deny them and push them down, they tend to unconsciously come to the surface and will influence our decision more. So that's counterproductive. But it's the right way to approach it, I believe, is to be aware of them, to acknowledge that those personal feelings are there, those personal opinions are there. Be aware of them, but don't let them override the facts and the objectivity. If we're aware of it and we acknowledge, anything, we know, we can then be careful not to give in to those tendencies, and just do it on the facts and the fairness of a situation. So we may be dealing with a situation where we need to step back a bit and be more objective. This could be what this card is coming out for, is to advise us to take a step or two back. And if for some reason that we can't do that, then maybe we need to get someone else's input, professional or otherwise, that is more objective, that hasn't got skin in the game necessarily, that it doesn't have any, they have no personal interest in one way or the other in which way the outcome is going to be, which way the scales are going to fall. And so getting someone else's opinion, getting somebody else's viewpoint that will just look at the situation factually and give their honest assessment may help us gain another insight, another perspective if we're finding it difficult to take a step back. And as I said, it could be just a friend or just someone else. It could be professional. It could be, and if it's legal issue, that's why you go to a court to get a legal minds on it that looks at the law rather than, you know, how they feel about it. Well, that's the idea. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes even then, in court, you'll get judgments that don't seem fair because personal biases have got in the way. But ideally, this card is talking about fairness and about treating ourselves fairly and other people's fairly, to weigh up the situation in those scales. And one thing I always say about this is that, yes, you can balance the scale so there's equal measure if you want. That's one way of looking at it, being right on both sides. But the way you judge a situation doesn't always come out 50-50. One side will have a greater weight of the facts, of the evidence than the other. And that's what you're doing. Which side you're coming down on, the pros and the cons, which one has the more weight. That's what the scales are for, not for equality necessarily. Not that we shouldn't fight for equality. The issue of equality is a valid one, but it doesn't. I don't think it applies necessarily here. We think of the balance of the scales, but that's a different kind of balance. And the scales are often are sometimes called a balance as well as scales. And I think that sometimes gives a bit of a meaning where things have to be balanced. They have to be equally level. But no, not always, because, if a certain thing is right, then the opposite to it is going to be wrong. It can't be of equal value. The truth cannot have the same weight as a lie. Otherwise, that's false. That's a different, it doesn't work that way. So we need to come to a just and fair conclusion on one side or the other by being objective and weighing things up fairly. And don't don't tip the scales in a certain favor of one or the other, which, where sometimes when they were weighing things, usually when we're weighing valuable things when someone was selling them and you went to somebody and they would put them on the scale, but they would fix the scales in their favor so that it gave a weight that was more favorable to them and how much they had to pay you, so they could make a profit. And so we don't do that. That's the opposite of the justice. We don't try and tip the scales one or the other. We let the evidence be weighed up and come out on whatever side carries the most weight, that seems the fairest to us when we take that objective viewpoint. Okay, so let's see which oracle card we get to go with that. We have the Protecting Treasure card, which we had this, didn't we? On day 2. The objectivity is true justice, true fairness will protect what's right. And if we behave fairly and operate ourselves, then we have, our treasure should be, the things we've grown in our lives will be protected, because the outcome will be the just and fair outcome. The key thing here is to be fair and objective. And that's a kind of protection for us as individuals. So that is today's message. I'll be back tomorrow with day 5. Until then, thank you for listening. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you all again very soon. Okay, bye-bye.